Hey gang, what is going on? And welcome to part 2 of our Superstar Spotlight about the Olympic gold medalist, Kurt Angle. If you haven't, you gotta go back. You gotta go watch part 1. We talk about Alliance Kurt. We talk about Milk Truck Kurt, Milkomania, Dairy Queen. All of that is there. So Ryan, Juan, Keith, the three of us are here. We've talked about most things that happened during the WWF. And before we keep talking about the SmackDown 6 and everything that happened afterwards, I want to take a quick pause and talk about, Kurt Angle's moveset. I think that Kurt Angle has a criminally underrated moveset. Even though people think it's great, I don't think enough people realize just how memorable it is. He adapted things, like we mentioned in part 1, with the multiple German suplexes, with the angle slam, with the ankle lock. Marty Jannetty still can't walk. He's just a sexy Kurt. Guys, what do you think about his moveset?
In part 1, the theme kind of was that Kurt Angle could do everything, especially being a performer. Like, he can go in the ring, be an amazing wrestler, be amazing on the microphone, and really his moveset is just another piece of that puzzle. Like, Kurt Angle could do everything in the ring. He could get down and dirty and do technical wrestling. He could do like crazy submission holds that you couldn't even think of. And then he could be a high flyer as well. Like, Kurt Angle, one of the most underrated moonsaults in the entire wrestling business. It is Kurt Angle's moonsault is a thing of beauty. Like, you actually see him float through the air whenever he does it. It is so good.
That is the please don't die moonsault, especially later in his career, when you're like, how is this guy even being held together by bones and muscles right now because of what he's been through? And he does that moonsault, and you're just like, oh my God, you don't have to do that moonsault anymore.
Hey, come on, Kurt,
please.
You're better than this.
Yes, please stay alive. I mean, so many awesome moves. Yeah, the multiple Germans has always been one of my favorites. And of course, that ankle lock. I love how he kind of had two versions of the ankle lock. He just kind of do the standing version, and then when he grapevine the leg, you knew it was over.
You know it was on once that grapevine happened.
There's almost no getting out of that.
And that's what's so great about a submission move like that. If he just did the standing one against a weaker opponent, then fine. But if he grapevines and the other guy actually gets to the ropes, it built up the match because you're thinking it's over, right? Like GG. And it's freaking great.
There was no re.
Oh, well, sorry. But let's talk a little bit about his theme song then. That's another part. His entrance. Real talk. As a kid, at some point, you did the Kurt Angle entrance. You put your hands up, your arms up, and you wanted the pyro to go off.
Yeah. On my wedding day, that's what I'm shooting for. I want pyro in the Kurt Angle entrance.
I believe WWF the Music Volume 5. The one that had
Metal.
The Rock's like Pie song on it.
Yeah.
That's the one that had Kurt Angle's theme. It was the first WWEF music CD I had. So I was playing the crap out of that along with all the other themes on there.
That theme song, as far as I know, was not made for him. It was used for like an American character during dark matches. It was something like that. There's footage of that somewhere. We'll link to it on social media, Byte That when we do find it. But something related to that. When you think about Kurt Angle's entrance, or the theme song in particular, there's always that chant, the "You Suck" chant that happens in there that is synonymous with Kurt Angle. And we were talking before we hit the record button for part 2, where Ryan, and I believe many other people, think that The Rock had some sort of involvement, because The Rock starts a lot of things in wrestling. But it was really thanks to the brand split. Kurt Angle was placed on SmackDown, and there is the infamous SmackDown 6, which includes the Guerrero, so Chavo and Eddie, Chris Benoit, Rey Mysterio, Edge, and Kurt Angle. And this was Edge's first real singles opportunity, where he had some, during the Alliance. But here we go with Kurt freaking Angle. And they played off to this whole thing leading up to a hair versus hair match. And he's the one that really called out the "You Suck" thing. Keith, you're the one that really recalls this, so I want to get your feedback. And then Ryan, in contrast, how did you ever think that those little comments would affect his entrance for 7 years or so?
Not Not to the degree that it did, because wow, that became like a cornerstone of Kurt Angle. Even later on in his career, when he was a good guy, people would still chant "You suck" during his entrance because it was just fun to do. But that was a time when a lot of like chants were happening. Everybody was trying to find the next big chant. Like this was around the time that the "What" chant started as well. So looking back, I don't think it's very surprising that the "You suck" chant really clung like it did. It became a very big part of the whole Kurt Angle Edge feud, which I'm admittedly a little rusty on, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that this followed Kurt Angle through most of his career until they had to essentially change his theme when he was switching gimmicks. It just kind of shows,
was a weird time. We'll get
when
to that.
something sticks, it's hard for it to go away. I mean, Stone Cold started the "What" chant all these years ago, and it still has not gone away. So if you give someone a way to chant during somebody's theme song and it's catchy, it's going to be real hard for that to go away. But you know what? At least the crowd is participating in your entrance, whether that is negative or positive. The fact that they care enough to chant that means you're doing something right.
That's very true.
I remember later on when he became babyface again, he would try to start the "You suck" chant. So he love it, and it's just weird. You're wanting people to chant "You suck." So then eventually it led to that hair versus hair match with Edge, where they were even doing, this is back when Photoshop was, a popular thing in WWE. So they would love to put, hey, here's what Edge will look like bald. Here's what Kurt Angle will look like bald. Kurt Angle lost. He got his head shaved bald. And then we had the wig and that new Kurt Angle, which was playable in a WWE game. And I was quite happy about that they got the wig playable in one of them. Did you guys think...
You could play as the wig?
Yeah, well, you can play as
Kurt
the
Angle
wig.
with the wig.
Kurt Angle with the Close enough. But considering the look is so important for a wrestler, right? Imagine if Stone Cold Steve Austin, I don't know if he can, but he decided to grow hair again. He would look weird. So here's the opposite, right? Here's a guy that you're so used to seeing with hair bald permanently for the rest of his WWE career. How did you initially react to that?
It was a little weird, but you kind of get used to the look of everyone, and I feel like that's just a thing you do in wrestling, where if someone's, losing their hair, I'm guessing Kurt Angle was probably starting to bald anyway. So, hey, why not
make some money off of it?
Why not make some money off of that? Why not take advantage of that? If you're going to be shaving your head soon anyway, you might as well add some drama to the situation and get a cool hair versus hair match out of it. So I really like that. And, Kurt Angle with the bald look, now it's like he looks weird with hair.
Yeah, it's hard
we
not
all got
to think
used
about
to
it.
He tried it. He tried it in TNA. It was not a pretty sight. I have an action figure about that, and it's as bad as you think it looks now.
He did grow his hair back for TNA?
Yeah, but he did have the bald spot, so he just had... I know that has a name,
I need to look
basically
that
the
up.
sides. It's like the sides and the back and a little bit of the top. But then, I don't know why I'm doing this
Is
with
it
my
like
hands.
a skullet?
Is that a skullet? I don't know what it's called.
Well, that you would
It's a
have to
little
have
more
long hair in the
mullety.
back. That was like Paul Heyman.
Yeah, he basically had a Paul Heyman type look, but bad. And Paul Heyman's look
I'll
like
have to
that
look
was
that
bad.
up.
So everybody look that up there. So we have the SmackDown 6 now. SmackDown is revolved around keeping Kurt Angle as one of the top dogs with Chris Benoit and Rey Mysterio, coming in from his WCW fame, but they also wanted to build up Eddie Guerrero to the next level. Chavo didn't really happen too much. And then Edge was the one that they really strived to get, all the way to switching theme songs. He had Rob Zombie and all that. Eventually, he recruited some people. And by that, I mean Paul Heyman. Paul Heyman wanted to give Kurt Angle a gift. And he gifted him Shelton Benjamin and Charlie Haas.
Don't look too deep into it, people.
Please don't. But that was a gift to Kurt Angle. That there's no way that doesn't sound wrong. And formed Team Angle. So here you have 3 wrestlers in every form of expression that, is wrestling. Catch as catch can, amateur wrestling background. all three very gifted in that, more so Shelton than Charlie Haas personally. But what did you guys think that now, here we go, Kurt Angle's not by himself. He has a little bit of not a stable, but yes, a stable, right? Like, can we call that a stable? Because it's more than just a tag team.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a group of three and you get a name, I think
would you consider Legacy a stable? Because it's basically the same thing.
True. So let's go with that, right? And they formed later the world's greatest tag team, but they came out to the Kurt Angle theme song. The entrance. They got to they got to live our dream and do the arm thing with the pyro. So I'm very jealous of them. I thought it was an excellent opportunity to build you stars, right? Because here you go, you bring in Kurt Angle, you have Charlie Haas and Shelton Benjamin basically steal his attire. Everything about them screamed Kurt Angle, and then eventually you saw, it was pretty obvious that Shelton Benjamin was the breakout star. He's now coming back to WWE. What did you guys think of that? Were you concerned that, now Kurt's going to share this, or this is not going to work, or who's going to turn on what?
No, to be honest, and this may be the unpopular opinion, but I consider Team Angle one of the biggest disappointments of that time in history. Just because it was something that had so much potential. Like, really, Charlie Haas and Shelton Benjamin should have been on fire at that point. But nothing came out of it. They had, and still have one of the coolest tag team finishers of all time, where they would do the leapfrog to the guy on the ropes. Like, that's so awesome. Why didn't anything become of that? They had they had it all at that point. They had Kurt Angle with them. They had the moves. They had the ability, and then just did nothing with it.
Yeah, Team Angle, I thought it was very cool that Angle had kind of gone into the position now where he's bringing up young talent to work close to him and then try and create new stars that way. And I thought Charlie Haas and Shelton Benjamin were really great fits based on their wrestling style to be teamed with Angle because of his style. And yeah, things didn't end up working out once they split away. I mean, Shelton had a decent singles run afterwards. Charlie almost killed Lillian Garcia, and then not much else to that.
Remember when he teamed with Viscera?
I do.
Right? Remember Charlito?
Oh, right. Oh, right. There was that time when he would just, make fun of everybody. Wasn't it, Charlie the Hitman Hart?
Yeah.
And
before
Haas McMahon.
There was Haas. Yeah. My God, that should be a tag team. They just mimic each other, and that's not the topic at hand.
And then the universe just collapses in on itself.
It's all about the universe here. But I think the key point is that they missed what was so important about Kurt Angle, and I think that's why the world's greatest tag team, once the match started, cool. But Kurt Angle was the total package, more so than Lex Luger. He had the comedy, he had the wrestling ability, he had everything. But then Charlie Haas and Shelton Benjamin just had the wrestling part. And at some point, once you got them...
Disgusted with you.
Hey, it's part of who I am. Once you got them removed from Kurt Angle, then that's when the Lillian Garcia things happen in life, and then they just don't turn out.
Well, they had a decent run without Kurt Angle as the world's greatest tag. But then they were, I believe, weren't
they nothing memorable. They just kind of fell to the wayside in that, because there was a lot of SmackDown tag teams at that time, and they just kind of fell in with the clutter.
Let's put it this way. As good as they were in the ring, if they had not had that initial run with Kurt Angle, everything afterwards, it wouldn't have mattered. You have a stacked roster at that time. You had a lot of opportunities. You have established guys, and I completely contribute their success to Kurt Angle. No questions about it. No questions about it? No extra questions?
No questions about it.
So let's keep going. Around this point, we saw that the next feud about to happen was Brock Lesnar versus Kurt Angle at WrestleMania 19. It's crazy when you compare WrestleMania 17, 18, 19. You could tell there was a definite shift in the WWE. And at Safeco Field, these two had an outstanding match. And Brock Lesnar almost died. But I believe that storyline did so much for Brock Lesnar, it was almost reminiscent of what happened with Kurt. Up until that point, Brock Lesnar was just the Beast, right? I mean, that wasn't his nickname. It was the next big thing. But when you feud with Kurt Angle, you got to be able to show off a little bit more personality. You got to be able to do more than just what you're doing. And I think the reason we got Brock Lesnar dancing in a feud with Eddie Guerrero and things like that afterwards happened because of Kurt Angle. I think Kurt Angle brought that talent, that potential out of Brock Lesnar. What do you guys think about that there?
I mean, I always appreciated the rivalry between Kurt and Brock Lesnar. When I think of the first brand split era in SmackDown, my mind immediately goes to Kurt and Brock and their amazing feud. I mean, yeah, that WrestleMania 19 match is a classic. And just when they had that kind of friendly rivalry where they were doing push-up contests and stuff like
and
that.
Grab-assing.
They kissed.
Oh, and there was the kiss. There was the
ass grab, too.
Why did that happen again?
That wasn't live. As far as I remember, that was recorded afterwards and they uploaded it. But yeah, they kissed and then they grabbed each other's ass. And I contribute that
This
ass grabbing.
spotlight's taking a turn for the worse here.
I don't care. But I contribute that ass grab by both men to be why Brock Lesnar developed more personality. You grab Kurt's ass and your life changes forever.
Hey, there's if there's a quote to take away from this, that is it. But yeah, like you said, Ryan, more than any other feud, this was really Brock's shining moment. Like, Brock had been shot to the moon at this point, but this is really Brock's first big test, his feud with Kurt Angle, and they both brought it. Like, it's one of those feuds where both people come out looking like $1 million. There was no winner. There was really no loser either. They both looked great, had incredible matches, and then somewhere along the line, the Big Show was in there, but we try not to think about that.
No, please, let's not. Any quick comments about that moment where Daniel Puder almost destroyed Kurt Angle's career by breaking his arm?
Cool at the time. Look where it got Daniel Puder. That's really all I can say.
Yeah, it's interesting when, Puder was basically, this was his chance to kind of show off his ability in sort of a shoot style fight, but it also shows that if you disrespect your peers, especially those who've been around longer, you disrespect the veterans.
You.
Yeah, bad things are gonna happen.
Yeah, for those that don't remember, because it's Daniel Puder, this was a guy that was involved in MMA, and he won the $1 million Tough Enough, right? It was the $1 million Tough Enough, the one that was on SmackDown.
I believe so.
And he never had it easy. He was chopped to death by Hardcore Holly in the Royal Rumble. My God, those chops. Holy crap. That was the 2004 Royal Rumble. I suggest everybody watching, check that out, and watch Hardcore Holly just pummel the crap out of Daniel Puder. It was 2004, 2003. It was one of those two. Maybe it was 2003.
I think it might be 5?
5? Okay. So it's one of those. At some point, Daniel Puder got wrecked by Hardcore Holly with some chops. And
esports.
Kurt Angle. Since 1999, he's been in the WWE. And with everything that we've talked about, the word stale could come into play. Because what else do you have? You've battled guys like Brock Lesnar that are brand new. You establish them. You establish tag teams. You establish a brand, which SmackDown. And now, around this point, he allegedly got injured, and they were trying to find creative ways, much like they did with Stone Cold during the Alliance era, where you got to be involved, right? So then one day, Big Show just says, I'm going to take your throat. I'm going to grab you by it. I'm going to choke slam you down. And one of the funniest looking camera angles in WWE history, Kurt Angle
just one of the
like
darkest
dead.
too. Yeah, he was like bleeding from his skull on the concrete.
What was Big Show not arrested? So he broke Kurt Angle's leg thanks to that choke slam from what
because that's
was that, like
all
30
that broke.
Feet?
Yeah,
More?
something like that. It was like a 2-story parking lot that Kurt Angle got choke slammed onto concrete, bleeding from his skull, just like left as a broken heap, and all Kurt Angle walked away with was a broken leg. Got off quite well.
A broken freaking leg.
Broken freaking leg.
that was an odd point of SmackDown. This is when he became general manager. What happened here, I think it was good, right? We've talked about, especially in the podcast, that whenever somebody gets injured, in real life, not in storyline, it's kind of good. It's bad for the person, right? But you're able to take a break from the character or that iteration of the character, and WWE has to find creative ways of progressing or evolving the character, and they did that with Kurt. Here's a guy that's known for his wrestling. You remove that from him. You slap on a cream-colored or light brown general manager outfit, and you're good to go. Any memorable things about that
time?
time?
And a wheelchair, of course.
And Luther Reigns. Let's not forget about Luther Reigns as heavy.
And Mark Jindrak. That happened. This is back when Rene Dupree and other people were getting pushes, and wrestling was going through some changes that weren't for the best. Any redeeming qualities about Luther Reigns? Just a quick comment about that.
The Reigns of Terror was a cool name.
He was Reigns before Roman Reigns, and
True.
I remember seeing him in a dark match before he debuted.
Did you see the potential? You saw the potential live.
Yeah,
God, we're so off track.
This is like in 2000 or 2001 too, so he had been developmental for quite a while before he actually debuted.
Okay, so a couple of years, and that, ladies and gentlemen, was our Luther Reigns break, and they probably think we're just thinking about Roman Reigns. I think that's actually for the better there. What do you guys think about the Eddie Guerrero storyline? I was not able to watch it a lot because around this time, my cable provider felt like, hey, we're going to remove the channel with SmackDown, and then we're just going to put it back on and forth. So I was watching primarily the pay-per-views and just some recaps that were happening on Raw. So I really didn't get a lot of this right now.
Really more than anybody else at that time, Kurt Angle was SmackDown. He was really there since the beginning, and he was the centerpiece for the SmackDown brand. Even if he wasn't the top guy, he was the most consistent guy on the roster. And he was, at that time, one of the best people that they could have paired Eddie Guerrero with, especially to make Eddie Guerrero's rise, and he was supposed to fill that top babyface spot. It was really the perfect time for that feud to happen. It was and the way that they set it up, I don't think gets enough credit, where Kurt Angle, since the beginning of his career, was flaunting around that, I'm an American hero, I'm better than you. And then it slowly transitioned, and especially with the Eddie Guerrero feud, hey, you guys look up to this person. He's lying, he's cheating, he's stealing. You love him for that. No, I'm an American hero. I'm supposed to tell you how you're supposed to be. You're supposed to do all these good things. You don't want to? Okay, well, now I'm going to make you. And then that was really the whole, Kurt Angle bad guy thing that happened, and it worked really well. And to continue the theme of Kurt Angle feuds, they had some amazing matches along the way.
Yeah, I mean, going into WrestleMania 20, Eddie Guerrero was already champion, but he'd only been a champion for about a month.
And how did he win it?
Angle,
he capitalized on Bill Goldberg.
Oh yes, that's right. So when Angle was really Eddie's first true test as champion going into WrestleMania, and like Keith said, Kurt was really the face of SmackDown, and this was almost sort of a passing of the torch of Angle kind of making Eddie the new face of SmackDown. And I thought that was a great way to kind of lead into Eddie's then feud with JBL and all of that. So Angle was really the guy who kind of really elevated
solidified
Eddie to that stardom.
I remember being disappointed by the conclusion of the WrestleMania match, just because out of everything that they could have done, they worked that whole thing.
Yeah, the
dumb.
boot.
Come on, it's WrestleMania. If you do that at a Backlash, anything else at a SmackDown, but at freaking WrestleMania, that for 2 years I was very disappointed with some of the matches that happened.
WrestleMania 20 had a lot of disappointments. It looked a lot better on paper than it actually panned out to be.
Ultimo Dragon. I think we can leave it at
Brock
that.
Lesnar, The Undertaker, that match.
God.
Steven Richards winning the world title. They're all disappointments.
That happened. DDP Yoga. Back before it was DDP Yoga. It helped them out. So Kurt Angle, around this point, rumors started coming out about, some health issues, and for years, I would say, like from 2005 or 2004 till 2006, it was always like Kurt Angle's gonna need some time off to heal from some injuries, but he was always there. And the fact of the matter is that if you saw what he was doing, the guy was still on fire, right? Like you wouldn't be able to tell that he was suffering from any kind of issues. So a year after all this happened, in 2005, he was drafted over to Raw. Along that, certain things happened. Carrying over the Eddie Guerrero thing, Daivari, who was Muhammad Hassan's manager, Muhammad Hassan got the boot from WWE, but then Daivari didn't really have anything going on for him. So he started refereeing some of the matches that Kurt Angle had, and then became his manager for Mark Henry as well. It goes back to the whole thing where around this time period, wrestling was weird. And then they got drafted over to Raw. And cue the John Cena hate. This is where I believe that, that was starting to happen more so than before. Where here's now the wrestling machine, Kurt Angle, about to dethrone John Cena, who we are tired from being shoved down our throats by the WWE machine, says many people around that time. I thought that it was a fun feud, but you could sort of tell that something was being done for Kurt Angle. Like, it wasn't the Kurt Angle. I think they stripped down Kurt Angle to just the wrestling aspect by this point. Maybe because he got too over. Like, I don't want to use smarky terms, but I'm just thinking, like, why did WWE purposely strip him of many of the things that people loved about him? Like, he was not just a bad guy, but he was a normal bad guy, if that makes sense. Even Kurt Angle at his worst, he had some comedy, or he had personality, and they stripped that from him.
Yeah, a lot of his switching to Raw was that they really wanted him to be a heel, but I feel like he was very much accepted by a large majority of the crowd at this point, and nobody really wanted to boo him, so they pair him up with Daivari, they have him talk less, be the wrestling machine, Kurt Angle, and take away any type of lovable aspects about him aside from just his match ability.
I think, and this is 100% my own opinion on this one, I think they had to strip him down at that point, especially considering he was feuding with John Cena. At that time, there wasn't a heck of a lot to Cena. It was just kind of the whole, I'm the champion, I'm going to beat everybody, I'm Superman, 5 moves of doom. So if you had that Kurt Angle that was on SmackDown, the Kurt Angle that has been amazing for years, going against Cena, there would be nothing redeemable about your gold star good guy, John Cena, at that time. So I think it was more of I don't put it as a knock against Kurt Angle himself, more that he kind of had to adapt to the situation that he was given, and it did turn out unfortunate. Like you could really look at this and start seeing that this is where the decline of Kurt Angle in the WWE started to happen.
Now let me stop Juan before he starts talking, because we once again got a little messed up timey-wimey.
Yes, we
because
did.
We need to jump back to when Kurt Angle was on SmackDown just towards the end, because there is a huge feud that we left out here concerning, it started in the 2005 Royal Rumble when Shawn Michaels eliminated Kurt Angle.
Yes. Good job, Ryan. This was an awesome Kurt Angle. And now, thanks that you brought it up, because there was a larger reason why I was upset with what happened with John Cena. The rivalry with Shawn Michaels was packed with personality from both guys. We got to see one of Sensational Sherry's last appearances with the infamous Sexy Kurt. I'll make your ankle hurt. Ankle hurt. Now, bearing the fact that Sherry maybe didn't do her best singing at the time, it was great. And I think maybe this was when Kurt peaked. He had an outstanding match with Shawn Michaels. He eliminated Shawn Michaels at the Rumble. They had this cross-brand rivalry, and then later on, Kurt went over to Raw, and that's when we started to get all the things with John Cena. I thought that this was a great storyline that I honestly thought wasn't going to happen. If you handed out the roster that was there right now, and you had asked me at that time, who do you want Kurt Angle to feud with? There wasn't a lot else left because like Triple H was around, but he'd already feuded with Triple H.
Been there, done that.
Exactly. So what was there left? It was almost as a joke. It'd be great if they did that thing with Shawn. Holy crap, we're actually getting Shawn Michaels, Kurt Angle. It's freaking awesome. It's like a dream match, except it actually happened. Right?
I mean, at that time, that was the dream match. If you could lump up any two people together on the roster that never had faced each other, it would be Kurt Angle and Shawn Michaels. And holy crap, did they deliver at WrestleMania. It was a phenomenal match. Once again, we talk about like meshing styles. If you want to see like high flying versus technical, that is the match to go and watch, because boy, did they leave it all out in the ring.
Yeah, and I mean, that kind of goes back to, hey, that was the benefits of brand splits back then, was you were able to keep Kurt Angle and Shawn Michaels apart for so many years that the anticipation for their rivalry just kept building and building. And then, these two guys, based on their ability, are gonna deliver. And so WrestleMania 21, they absolutely stole the show. That was a match of the year for pretty much everybody that year. Yep. And then, so the whole Kurt Angle Raw thing happened, and they were able to continue that feud to have two more matches. So yeah, just an amazing feud, and the biggest highlight of WrestleMania 21, which, even though WrestleMania 21 was like the birth of the stardom of Batista and John Cena, everyone was talking about Kurt Angle versus Shawn Michaels.
Yep.
You brought up an excellent point there, the brand split, and this applies to now that we do have a brand split again. It allows you to build up dream matches with active superstars. Instead of thinking past versus present, you can build up superstar A and B and then have them clash either at a special pay-per-view like bragging rights or something if they bring that back, or at a cross-brand pay-per-view. But it's cool. It brings out different opportunities there. Now that we switch back to Raw, he is there. There's that storyline with John Cena, which I think was okay. I think they got the point across. It was to make this was almost as a way to prove John Cena can wrestle. This was around the time where they started poking jokes. Even Triple H later on went to say, you happen to not be a very good wrestler to John Cena. So maybe this was WWE's way of addressing some concerns that fans around the world were having, because it wasn't just a North American thing. You could hear that in different places. Even magazines down here in Puerto Rico were calling out, John Cena can't wrestle, he needs to be carried. I strongly disagree with that. This is the set port. Wait. I'm agreeing with the fact that John Cena can wrestle.
At that time, like during that period in John Cena's career, you would defend that.
Okay, we can have this is clearly not the place to have that conversation.
This is the Kurt Angle spotlight.
Okay,
right?
fair enough.
Let's.
I will say
everyone can have their opinions.
Yeah,
I mean, there's no doubt that Cena definitely could afford to have the help of Kurt Angle through a match.
Agreed.
He certainly wasn't, the main. He wasn't Big Match John at the time, if you will.
I think that feud was there for the exact reason that I just mentioned. It played across well, so I don't see what the issue was at the point with, that Cena can't wrestle or not, because my issue with Cena was never the wrestling part. It was just, I am tired of whatever happened at that point. He just won, regardless of the match. It didn't matter who he faced, and that was my problem back then. And enough other people had other issues, then that's another story. Now back to Mr. Kurt Angle. We're getting near the end here. He had that match with John Cena. WWE around this point, we had the first One Night Stand ECW pay-per-view. Around this point, ECW was happening, the TV show. You had Marcus Corvon, ECW legend Kevin Thorne was there, ECW legend The Zombie, and they also had Salmon, I think, and Rhino, and other people. Tommy Dreamer, I think that guy used to wrestle for ECW, so of course you bring it
Braden
back.
Walker, and he's going to knock your teeth
man.
out.
You had Johnny Nitro as an ECW champion, so you bring it back to the very beginning of ECW with Kurt Angle. That's what you do.
Yep. The Extreme Wrestling Machine, Kurt Angle.
And if I complained about WWE stripping Kurt Angle of his abilities with the John Cena storyline, holy crap. You strip off the theme song, you strip off everything. He's only a wrestler, and you can't even tell they're, for whatever reason, not giving him a big emphasis. He's an ECW, and he's Kurt Angle. He is Kurt Angle, and they're treating him like a pet project, like a side project. And I don't know if this was a backstage negotiation with either you do this or you're out because of his health problems, but as a wrestling fan watching that, you could tell that the end of Kurt Angle in WWE was drawing near.
Absolutely. Like you mentioned, this is when you started hearing way more about Kurt Angle and running into health problems, to the point where there was reports going out like Kurt Angle is just like, he needs pills to function. Like, he needs to take pain medication just to do daily stuff. So you really started to wonder, like, how much longer does Kurt Angle have? So maybe that's why they put him on ECW, just to because there was a lot of younger talent there. Hey, work with Kurt Angle a bit, learn your stuff while you can, and then go on and do whatever. But it felt so weird, especially with the whole extreme wrestling machine. Like, when you think extreme hardcore, you think Kurt Angle, right? No, you don't. And then they, like you mentioned, they changed the theme. I remember being a fan at that point, trying to incorporate "You Suck" into the theme, but the melody was done in a way where there's just no possible way to make that happen.
It was a scientific change for that theme song.
It was, and I wasn't a fan. It just, nothing about Kurt Angle's ECW run felt great. He was a very stripped down version that didn't even really wrestle like he used to as well, and it just, everything about it
He
felt
was dry.
wrong.
He was very dry.
Very dry.
Yeah, I mean, I remember the ECW draft and Paul Heyman picking Kurt Angle, and that was kind of the moment where you're like, whoa, so maybe they are going to put some effort into this ECW thing. You thought, Kurt Angle was the path to legitimacy for this third brand, that in RVD, of course, but Angle was that big grab from the guys you didn't expect to show up on the ECW brand. And unfortunately, the fact that it was called ECW is a huge reason why that brand failed. And yeah, this was just really the tail end of Kurt Angle's career. And this was when he really felt like he just wasn't doing anything relevant. I mean, from Angle's debut and on, he always felt like he was a relevant part of the show. And this was really that first time we got that feeling of like, oh, he's just kind of like he's an afterthought now.
I'd say even more than an afterthought. He felt like an old wrestler coming back, except he never left. He was there the whole time. Yet he had this part-time treatment, except the part-timer usually tends to get noticed, as opposed to Kurt Angle, who was just sort of there. Unfortunately, what happened afterwards is that he left. And the good thing about that part was, as a fan, the three of us were talking around the point, like, finally, get better, Kurt, get healthy, and then come back. Take your time. We don't care how many years it takes. What does he do? He took about, not even a year, it felt like, or around that time, and then he shows up in TNA. And he was never as good in TNA as he was in WWE. Now, we're not going to have a spotlight about Kurt Angle in TNA because we didn't watch all of it, but you can talk about your main event mafias. Kurt Angle did
you
try.
You want to know how long it was? He left WWE. Let's see. He was released on August 25th, 2006.
Yeah, it wasn't long at all.
On September 24th, 2006, during the closing segment of No Surrender, TNA President Dixie Carter announced that TNA Wrestling had signed Angle to a contract.
Because they had Kurt on television, but his no-compete clause hadn't expired yet, so he couldn't wrestle there, but he showed up. I remember that now. Jeez.
Angle made his debut on a TNA debut on October 19th, confronting Samoa Joe.
And that moment right there was great, right? I think the issue is, and the unfortunate, and this is, the sad part of the story here, is that for years later, and this is not fan speculation, TNA superstars like Gail Kim would openly say in interviews, Kurt Angle after a match had to go to a wheelchair because the man couldn't walk. Yet he kept pushing himself and pushing himself. He's battling top independent talent like Zack Sabre Jr. around the world. And as great as those things are, I am always worried that Kurt Angle, because of his abuse, his physical abuse and drug abuse with painkillers and all that, I don't want him to become another tragedy. I want him to be able to get that closure in WWE. And that right there is sort of the last question. Kurt Angle, even though he was in TNA for years, and a lot of years.
Longer than WWE.
Which is ridiculous. And it shows how great he was in WWE. I want him to come back. Whether it be one match or hell, give me no matches. If you're going to do the Sting route, just induct the man into the Hall of Fame, but just have him have that closure, because the fact that the last 3 to 4 topics that we have about Kurt Angle and WWE are like, yeah, he had that thing with John Cena. Yeah, he was in ECW and they stripped all that and then he was gone. That sucks. And that should not be the way that a wrestling legend and a guaranteed Hall of Famer should close out his career in the WWE.
Yeah, no, I agree with you completely. I would like to see, even if it's not for that, like a one match, I would like to see Kurt Angle come back one day. It's just very unfortunate the way that Kurt Angle's WWE career ended. It almost to the point where it feels like they wore Kurt Angle down to his breaking point and then just never really recovered after that. But it's been a long time, and you can never say never, and Kurt Angle is a shoo-in for the WWE Hall of Fame. He is up very high on my list of people that deserve to be there and should be there one day.
Yeah, see, I would like to see Kurt Angle have a redemption story, and to give context on that, essentially, to my understanding through various reports, when Angle left WWE, WWE released him so that he could get help. And, I mean, we're talking 2006, all of us were concerned for Kurt Angle's health. The fact that he is still wrestling to this very day is insane.
10 years later.
It doesn't make sense. It's just, it shouldn't be possible, but somehow he's still going. So WWE released Kurt Angle so that he could get help, and then basically, to my understanding, had an open door policy. When he's good to go, he could come back to the WWE. So by going to TNA just a couple months later, I think WWE has felt sort of betrayed ever since. And that is why there's sort of, there's probably a rockier relationship between WWE and Kurt Angle than they'd like to let on. So I would like to see that redemption story. We've seen that, with the Ultimate Warrior and various other wrestlers where there can be a way for two parties who didn't get along for a long time to make up, and a lot of good things come from that.
Yeah, and in some ways it makes sense for WWE to be hesitant, because if it was a personality problem, then whatever. But we talk about concussions.
This is health.
Yeah, drug abuse, general health. Kurt Angle is very much in that topic. Do you want to risk as a company to bring this guy in because it's the cool thing or the awesome thing to do, but then something happens and you're accountable? Because that is the very reason you released him back around 2006, right? So Kurt Angle, he is one of my favorite superstars of all time. Those watching, this has been our complete series of the Kurt Angle Spotlight. As I mentioned at the part one at the very beginning, we didn't get to every single thing because this would be a 20-hour thing about Kurt Angle, and he rightfully deserves something like that. I get some of the dates messed up, but that's part of the experience. And contrary to what happened with the Kane Spotlight, it's very clear because you can tell where there's bad and where there's good. With Kurt Angle, the only real bad part for me was at the very end, which is why that redemption thing should happen. So those watching, let us know. Leave a comment with your favorite Kurt Angle moment throughout history. Not just bald, not just with hair, not just kind of with hair. Kurt Angle overall. If you have any suggestions for future spotlights or topics for Square Roundtables, drop them in the comment section. If you like this video, 45 minute plus. I think this is the longest part we've ever done for the spotlight. So drop a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, check out our podcast, and if you want to go the extra mile and support what it is Byte That does, you can do so by pledging at patreon.com/Byte That. You get some perks, such as at some point in the podcast, Ryan may say your name in his soothing, sexy voice. You get some early access of the things that Keith edits on Sunday nights. You get them on a Monday. You get things like that. So until next time, thank you for watching, and we will be back with tons more right here. Where Keith? I forgot her name.
Would that be on Byte That?
Yeah.
On Byte That.
That is it.
Okay.